Some people call themselves property investors. I think otherwise. I think they are an employee for the bank. Now, if you think you're a landlord and you have a mortgage and a tenant, what do you need to do? You need to fix leaks, you have to chase after the rent, you have to pay assessment, and the bank takes 4.5% or whatever interest rate they give you in terms of loans, and you probably get to keep the scraps. And if you reverse that role and you become a shareholder of a bank, you do nothing. They have to pay you dividend interest or dividend yields that can range anywhere between 5 to even sometimes 8 or 9%. Who is the real asset owner here? Who is the one that is actually having to work for the money versus having an organization actually work for them? Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is John Huo. I used to be an engineer, now full-time investor, wealth planning director at Phillip Capital Malaysia. And I'm also the author of an upcoming book called The Malaysian Multi-Baggers. And for companies to qualify to be in that book, you have to at least 10 times shareholder returns over the past 20 years. Only then you get into the list. Point one, property versus equities. If you think about why do they call real estate fixed asset, it's because you are fixed to them. What do I mean? In a crisis, when you need cash urgently, how fast can you liquidate your property? Because in a crisis, cash is actually oxygen, that's the real lifeline, your flow of blood, I put it this way. A house is literally like a vacuum. Think about the average time you need to convert property to cash. I would argue is anywhere between 180 days to 200 days or even longer. I even had a cash buyer once I used to be a property investor, so I used to be on the other side of the fence. And this guy was a cash buyer. He didn't even need a loan. So it actually speed up the process so much more. But even then, it took him about 6 to 7 months for me to get my money. Think about that. If you have a loan, you have to find a buyer, he has to get the loan approved, you have to do all the legal transfer, you have to wait for lawyers on both sides. Now contrast that to equities. What is the mantra here? 2 clicks, I'm out. What do I mean by 2 clicks? I click whether I want to sell, I key in the order quantity, I click confirm, and that's it. 2 days later, T plus 2, the transaction day plus 2, I already have the money in my bank. That is proposition number 1 between property and equity. Oh, here's the bonus point. Think about whether you can sell portions of your real estate versus portions of your equity. In real estate, can you just sell the bathroom? Can you just sell the kitchen? I doubt so, right? You can rent it out in pieces, but you can't sell it in pieces. But in equity, you can sell 5%, you can sell 10%. It is so unitized, so liquid that, a lot of people forget that liquidity is actually a very key criteria in determining which asset class you invest in. Point number 2, property versus equity. Now, a lot of online property gurus or even face-to-face classes will tell you the beauty about real estate is leverage. Use other people's money, use the bank's money. But they forget one thing, and this is always said for casinos, and I include this as banks. Who always wins? It's always the house, and in this case, it's the bank. How do they always win? The moment you take a loan, the fixed interest rates or the variable interest rates that they're going to charge you, it's going to be anywhere between 4 to actually 5%, and depending on if the interest rates rise or decrease, right? What is your average rental yield for property today? You'll be lucky to get 3. Most people actually get negative yields, negative net rental yields versus the price of the property they purchased. So if you're paying the bank for, let's say, 4.5% and your rental yield is, let's just say, 3%, then you are already having a negative 1.5% carry every year. But then they will counter argue, oh John, don't worry, we will come back with capital appreciation. That will be point number 3, which I'll do the math later. But hear me out here. Just rental yield alone, you are net negative 1.5% every year. And if you multiply that on a 90% loan, if there's a 5% drop in valuation property, it wipes out 50% of your equity value. You go and do the math. So I think leverage is overblown or oversold. Is really a double-edged sword. What you really need to understand is that if you are bleeding cash flow every month, that's not just, you have to think about time value money. The value of money today, you're already bleeding. And that value, you compound it into the future, how much in terms of opportunity cost. Point number 3, property versus equity. Now, I'm going to run a simulated scenario for those in the camp that says, don't worry about negative rental yield today because I'm going to make it all back in capital appreciation later. Let's look at the math, and I've gathered data from the National Property Information Center, and they are responsible for gathering all the median house prices, average house prices based on transacted, not asking price, not what you see on real estate sites, because that may not represent the true value. So NAPIC data actually shows that the compounding rate of return for property, median property prices over the past 10 years is roughly 3.2%. Okay, so put yourself in investor A's shoes. He comes out with cash. I were to simplify the simulation by him not even borrowing money from the bank. He bought everything in cash, right? And it's a 500,000 property. NAPIC says that price appreciation is 3.2% over the CAGR, compounding annual growth rate, over the past 10 years. So gross value after 10 years is 685,000. Your sinking fund will take you 36,000, quit rent probably about 15, renovation repair 20, which I think is very, very cheap. So your net liquidation value after 10 years is 614,000, which nets you a return of 114,000. Put yourself in investor B, which took out 500,000, he put it into equity, and it returns him 10% a year, right? Gross value after 10 years is 1.3 million. What is your maintenance cost? What is your quit rent? What is your renovation and repair? You don't even need to pay stamp duty. Hello, there's no there is capital gains tax in Malaysia, but it's not enforced yet. There's so far the only tax that you have to pay as an equity investor is usually for dividends. So net liquidation value after 10 years is 1.3 million. Your net profit is 800,000. Now contrast that investor A, 114,000, 800,000. I don't know about you, but the math proof otherwise. Obviously, we can go into this debate of whether, if we take loan, then we only calculate the cash portion of the 10% down payment that you have to put, versus, and then you net off whatever 90% the loan. Hello, you still have to net off net interest costs. So I use this simulation to simplify it. 500,000 property, 500,000 equity against the real return rates and the compound effect. So to further illustrate my point about capital appreciation, I'm now going to show you an example of Singapore property appreciation. And they say that Singapore property, you can't go wrong, right? Okay, let's do the math. I got this comment in the podcast video I did with a good friend of mine, Kusu Chuang, and the title of the video was Skip the House. I've got very colorful comments, I would say. One was, it was the stupidest suggestion that I've ever heard. And then it says, no, that it doesn't work. Okay, let's look at this commenter. He actually said, my HP friend from Penang, Singapore PR, married into Singapore wife. Okay, his 5-bedroom HDB BTO only cost him 260,000 in 2006. Okay, and today in 2025 or last year 2025, the value is 800,000. So 260,000 to 800,000 in roughly about 19 years. So if you do the math and you do the compounding return, the return is 6%. Guys, I have not even included, I haven't even net off financing costs. I haven't even net off any, any maintenance, repair that he has to do. 19 years, you never renovated your house, you never repaired your house. I don't believe it. Okay, then obviously, then some people argue, but if you can rent it out, yeah, okay, we have to go through another round of spreadsheet. But the point I'm trying to make is that NAPIC data already show you for the past 20 years, on a good year, you average out on the negative year, it probably returns you about 5%. And in Singapore itself, you're talking about Singapore HDB, a 5-bedroom. It's not easy to find a 5-bedroom HDB in Singapore. For those Singapore property investors, they will know, right? And for it to only compound about 6%, there you go. I think don't use opinion, use math, right? Point number 5, property versus equity. What is your entry cost? What is your transaction cost? A lot of people don't put it into the calculation as well. They just see, okay, I bought this house at X amount and I sold it at X amount, but all that transaction costs in between, your MOT, or okay, let's break it down. Okay, so there's this thing called an MOT, which is a memorandum of transfer, which is actually a stamp duty. You pay anywhere between 1 to 4% as a tier, right? Then you've got your legal fee, you've got your agent fee. Okay, thank God you don't have a brokerage fee. Now, on the other side, on equities, what do you pay? You actually pay, sometimes you pay, you have to pay stamp duty on all your transactions for your stock, right? But you don't have to pay legal fee, right? You don't have to pay an agent fee. And you do have to pay a brokerage fee that ranges anywhere between 0.1 to 0.15, depending on the broker you use. So your sunk cost alone on property, at entry is already, you're talking about tens of thousands, and depending on the value of your property. So ballpark, most properties between 500 to 700,000, the MOT alone is close to 20-30,000 already, okay? Whereas if you were to pay 0.1% or 0.115% on your equity side for the same amount of money, it's going to be so much more less. So here's the best part. On the exit for equity and on the exit for property, if you sell the property below 5 years, then you get another real estate capital gains tax, right? Versus on the equity side, you don't get capital gains tax. So there you go, entry costs. Point number 5. Now, this video isn't meant to pitch a war between the property guys versus the equity guys. I'm just trying to show you hard facts and numbers before you come up with an opinion. And I'm also here to lay out a framework of what can be a solution for you. Now, I take equities investing as a full-time job. I do the research. I love it. I love meeting owners. I love reading up about businesses, studying industries, benchmarking against peers. But that's me. So what's the solution for the everyday Malaysian? What frameworks that you can use that you may not need to even be too hard. You don't even need to put too hard of a work to be able to, I would say, have a leg up against property investing. Look at equities of very, very safe instruments. For example, a REIT, a real estate investment trust. REITs in Malaysia can gain you anywhere between 5-6%, and you only pay a little bit of withholding tax, but that's about it. You don't pay capital gains tax. So if the REIT share price actually goes up, there you go, another bonus. Another alternative, what about banks? If you buy one of the biggest banks in Malaysia, it's not one of the biggest, it is the biggest bank in Malaysia, Maybank. I think the dividend yields have ranged anywhere between 6 to 8% on an average, right, over the past 10, 20 years, right? So and you have so much less headache. And when you want to exit, 2 clicks, you're out, right? You get the money within 2 days. So I think it's more of an opening and an awareness for you to shift your mindset. There are some guys who would come back and debate with me, oh, I've done so well in properties, right? But he had to spend the time, effort to find specialized locations. He would cherry pick, or he or she would cherry pick the results of a particular area in property that have just boomed, right? And then it says, John, it's unfair for you to say, how am I going to get 10% kind of return? Yeah, don't look for those kind of 10%. The safe 6 to 7%, if you're comfortable with it, because the risk appetite is different for everyone, right? And in this case, I'm telling you, 6-7% is very, very doable, and it's been, the data has been there for the past 10, 20 years, right? And if you don't even have the time to go and study, stocks in detail, then don't be upset about not getting the alpha of more than 10% lah. I mean, that's you need to put in effort in order to get that. But if you want risk-free, so-called stress-free, those are the examples I can give you on equity investing that can far outperform whatever property investing, average property investing that you can compare against to. So there you go. I hope you've gained something from this video. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. See you.